want to talk about how I think or I see many writers, whether it be on some of the test projects and stuff when we're working with new writers, or just people in our course, or what clients show us they've produced before. I want to talk about like how they typically do it, and then how we think about it, and how that relates to what Benji was saying, which is how do we interview the subject matter expert to get the most information possible to make our post good and better than the rest. I already know that's what I want. So first thing is, who is the interview with? I'm asking my point of contact, whether I'm an employee. If I'm an employee, it's easier. Like I know who's at the company. Or if they're my client, I'm asking the point of contact. I want the person who you think can speak to the details of the features and their benefits and their uniqueness as much as possible.
We recently did a video on writing, and so far it's done pretty well, but we wanted to do a video on a different aspect of writing, which is how do you do the interview? We've talked a lot about how interviews are one of the competitive advantages that we have to extract information from subject matter experts to make the piece better, but we found from writers on our team and just other people that we've talked to that the interview process isn't always straightforward. And so we kind of wanted to talk through the research that we do beforehand to be able to conduct those interviews and get the information that we need to put into the articles. And so Davish has a couple examples of different articles, and we're going to talk through how we would basically do research on the website and SERP analysis to figure out what to ask the subject matter expert on an interview call with them.
Yeah, I think we're going to start this on today's video. We're going to focus on bottom of funnel keywords, specifically what we call category keywords. And so I have a couple examples. Let's see if it makes sense to do both. We're going to start with email provider tools. And I just picked that because we don't really have a client on it, so it's not going to have any conflict of interest. And like everyone I imagine knows about things like, basically it's like MailChimp and competitors. And we're going to dissect a few of the blog posts and use that as kind of our basis in which to have this conversation of how do we at Grow and Convert think through architecting this piece. The previous video that Benji talked about, I talked a little bit about like the writing aspect and dissecting certain sentences, but there's almost a meta level, like planning level, that's equally or arguably more important, actually. Yeah, probably more important. Even if your sentences are kind of clunky and generic and fluff free, like so be it. If you get the argumentation correct and you're talking about the right things, like you'll get some results, I think. So we're going to use that. Let us know in comments wherever you put them, on YouTube, in the podcast comments, or just emailing to us or on social. Let us know if you like these and you want some more of these, because we could do some more higher funnel stuff, how-to type queries, what we call like jobs to be done, and think through how we architect those as well. But we'll start with this like total bottom of the funnel type keyword. So let me share my screen and we'll talk through it. This is an example keyword for this, best email service providers. So just to be clear, like email service providers, we're talking about, no, I had a better one. Email marketing tools, here we go. So we're talking about things like, MailChimp and alternatives. And the post that I want to start with, and I want to talk about how I think or I see many writers, whether it be on some of the test projects and stuff when we're working with new writers, or just people in our course, or what clients show us they've produced before. I'm going to talk about like how they typically do it, and then how we think about it and how that relates to what Benji was saying, which is how do we interview the subject matter expert to get the most information possible to make our post good and better than the rest. So the first theme is, for a keyword like this, there is repetitiveness in all of the results. And that's the first place where, when you're writing this post, you can get lost because the instinct is, I'm just going to do the same thing. So if we look at some of these, like I clicked into what Sprout Social had the first one. So we look at these. First of all, they're going to be lists, and you should do a list. So on that part, you're right, because like that's just fulfilling search intent. Like these people are literally Googling for email marketing tools. Like you're going to give them a list of tools because that's what they want, right? Otherwise, Google's not going to rank you. So we look at Sprout Social, and they'll have some kind of intro, and I already ripped on intros with like these sort of generic stats on the previous video, but in short, like you don't need to do this. And I'll talk about later what you should do in the intro. Like people are literally looking for an email marketing tool. You don't need to like tell them that email is a top channel because such and such study said 87% of B2B marketers did it. You're just wasting space. What we're going to eventually get at to sort of foreshadow the ending. Yeah, actually, this is important for me to say at the beginning. What I'm thinking about when I'm writing a post like this, when I'm tasked with writing this, what I would be thinking about the entire time from the first minute is, what are my clients or the tool I'm writing, my tool, what are its strengths in this topic? So the example tool I wanted to talk about later was one that is ranking number 5 or something, OmniSend. And I have like its homepage up here, or like its email, feature page up. And so it says like, create beautiful campaigns. My instinct there will be like, okay, that's fine, but like everyone does that. Build shoppable emails fast. That's kind of interesting. So it looks like it's like an e-commerce angle or whatever. Set up from blasts for all. What does that even mean? Set up from blasts for all? Step up from blast for all. Oh, it's about segmentation. Okay, that's kind of interesting, but probably other people are going to talk about segmentation too. Get more opens in sales. How? Right? So I'm like thinking from the beginning, why is this unique? How is this better? Okay? So the first mistake is you go through this and you're thinking, okay, so Sprout Social, they're going to go over HubSpot. HubSpot is known for this, blah, blah, blah. And then like, that's it. 3 paragraphs and a screenshot. And then Sender is some other tool. So it's one of the best free tools in the market, blah, 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 send and boost. So you're just like, okay, like this is what Google is ranking. But you got to be careful. Like this domain has a lot of authority. So they can get away with doing this. And Sprout Social, like they can do everything, right? Don't they do email as well? And so they have a lot of authority, so they can get away with this. But like, this isn't really selling Sprout Social, which is our goal. Like where? They're not even talking about themselves yet. Maybe they're not even an email. Maybe they're just like social planning.
Yeah, I think they are just a social planning tool. I don't even really think they do email.
Yeah.
So this for them is probably just a traffic play.
Yeah. So they don't even need to do this. But like, I think a lot of writers would just be like, okay, like this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to list a bunch of them and I'm going to put my clients somewhere in there. Maybe number 1, maybe number 5 or whatever. And they're going to be given the same amount of space, as the other ones, and just be given like 3 paragraphs or something like this.
Well, the mistake that you're saying people make, if we go back to the SERP, is they look at the SERP, they kind of just look that everyone's creating a list, and then they just think, I need to do a list. But what you're saying is different here is when we're looking at the SERP, okay, yes, you want to follow a similar framework as what's already ranking, but what's different in the way that we're approaching it is we're saying, what unique information can we provide to the reader that's not in these posts? And what you're saying is most writers would just say, no, let's copy what's in these posts instead of thinking about that unique differentiator.
Yes. And specifically for bottom of funnel keywords that are product queries, email marketing tools, I'm thinking one level more specific than just what unique information can I provide in there. I'm thinking that sells the client's product. Because look, like the reality is, other than that, you don't have any unique information. It's email marketing. Like other than like some differentiator or something about your features, like whether it's your company or your client's company or whatever, like other than that, what are you going to say? It's email marketing. Like this is what kind of, it's getting me worked up because we've talked a lot about this, you and I, and sometimes we talk on social and stuff about this, but like, this is what I think sometimes people like feel like this content, they feel uncomfortable about it because you're like, well, we don't want to sell ourselves too hard or whatever. But like, you don't need to worry about all content being thought leadership. or whatever. If you were doing some opinion or how-to piece on just like marketing in general, or you were arguing some point of like people are not paying attention to email marketing enough, that's cool. That's its own piece. It's not this piece. And so here, the only way you have to differentiate is your features and how you approach this or designed your tool in a different way. And that's what I would focus on. So I'm setting up for the interview. So I already know what I want to, I want to get an interview with someone. So if Omnisend is my channel, and I just picked them at random because I saw their blog post and I was like, we can talk about this, right? It has all the kind of like characteristics I wanted to talk about. We have no relationship to Omnisend. I have no idea who did it. I'm like, if you're watching this video, like, I apologize. We mean this in like a good, respect to Bernard Meyer. So like, we have no relationship with them. But if I'm using this as an example, I already know that's what I want. So first thing is, who is the interview with? I'm asking my point of contact, whether I'm an employee. If I'm an employee, it's easier. Like I know who's else is at the company. Or if they're my client, I'm asking the point of contact. I want the person who you think can speak to the details of the features and their benefits and their uniqueness as much as possible. Good personas for that. Sales. Like you ask, like, I want the most like the salesperson who's good, but also like willing to speak to marketers. Because sometimes salespeople are like, I don't have time for this. Like, what is this? Or just like maybe someone on the marketing team, honestly, could sometimes work if they can be a good interview. Or sometimes someone from the product team can work because they'll know a lot of details of like, how did we design this? Like every email marketing tool is going to talk about segmentation. Every email marketing tool is going to talk about beautiful templates and beautiful design. So like it's just going to be like kind of generic if you don't get into like, well, how does this work? And then the other thing is I would want, and I would want like a demo. It says request a demo. I'd want demo recordings so I can see how do the salespeople walk through these and how are the customers reacting to them. And we do all of this in our process for our clients. Like we do this upfront. We're asking for demo recordings at the start of the engagement, and we're doing interviews with sales, with marketing or product at the start of the engagement. And that's usually enough to do a piece like this. But if needed, we'll do an additional interview for it. So I'm going through and be like, okay, like this is what they're talking about. Now, the next level of this SERP analysis in terms of how to write the piece and what to do for the interview is I'm looking at the features that are being discussed in each of these pieces. So if we go back to that Sprout Social piece, I would want to look in and be like, what features are they talking about for each of them? So I see like, good looking designs of these newsletter emails, templates, customization. But frankly, this piece doesn't, analytics. So it has robust analytics features so you can see what's going on. And I'm already thinking ahead here. So like you can literally make a list and be like, we're going to need to talk about designing beautiful emails. We're going to need to talk about like templates to save time in those designs. We're going to need to talk about analytics, right? And I just like keep going through. And frankly, this, as we talked about, like this particular one, it's not really heavy on features. Then I go to the next one. So one of the articles was like from VisMe or something. Yeah, this one. Zapier I skipped because it says like free. Like I don't, you usually don't want to rank for like free stuff or copy what they're saying. So that's whatever. But like here. So they're doing the same thing. So the best email, start with MailChimp. A couple sentences on MailChimp. Everybody knows who MailChimp is. Key features, email builder. So again, I'm starting to notice the pattern. Every single person is obviously going to talk about an email builder because that's literally what this thing does. So I want to ask, so and then I'm probably flipping
This
back.
one's specific for e-commerce though. If you scroll up a little, I'm guessing that VisMe is a e-commerce tool of some sort.
It says for different businesses.
Yeah, right there, right above. No, scroll down.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so that's another aspect is you're thinking about these, but what I'm doing is I would be flipping back and forth and trying to see if I can get some early signs of what could be an angle on designing. So I'm already planning in my head, there's going to be some kind of H2 or H3 about like how we like build designing emails. Like how do you design emails in Omnisend and why is it like a great experience? And so I'd be like reading this and be like, oh, how does this work? I'd go into here and say email templates. How does this work? And by the way, and so if you're already thinking, what if we don't have a lot of differentiators? Like, yeah, like all of these competitors are also going to have some kind of email builder, right? All of them are going to have templates that you can start with a ready-made design, right? Everyone's heard the MailChimp ads when they listen to a podcast. Pre-built layout. So like, your differentiation doesn't have to be great. It doesn't have to be like a huge thing. Yes, like we have clients too that aren't that differentiated. That like they're in a space where they, have some market share and they have features and everyone else kind of has the same features too. But you'd be like, okay, even if it doesn't mean that you need to be able to write in your blog post, we have this thing with our ready-made templates and no one else has that. Like if that's not true, don't lie. But what it is what you can do at the next level is, what are you proud of? What is the experience of designing an email in OmniSend? That's what I'm already thinking of. And that's what I want to get from my interview. Like I'm like jotting that down in my notes for the interview. We want to do a deep dive where I'm literally going to be asking the person, if Benji is my interview, I'd say, Benji, and I would explain all of this stuff that I already know. Every competitor talks about beautiful templates and designs to start from. Every competitor says like they have like a no-code drag and drop builder. Walk me through why we are proud of ours. And no, you can phrase it like that. You don't have to say, what's different. Because sometimes like in these
there isn't differentiation. Yeah.
Yeah, like sometimes
email
clients
marketing
have been like, honestly, there isn't a lot of differentiation. They've told me this.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. In those situations where you have a very commoditized product, what are those key details that you're looking for that you can include in the piece that do add some differentiation? Again, it's not like from a feature perspective, there's something completely different, but just if you were thinking about writing something different in your piece just to make the client stand out and it was a very undifferentiated project, like what are some of those questions that you might ask the interviewee to extract just some uniqueness?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we can spend some time here. I would ask them, what in the email building experience, to make it specific to this conversation, what do our customers love? As one angle to get at it. This reminds me of this thing I heard from some old business guru who said in the 80s or whatever, he was consulted by a beer making company in the Midwest. And they took him through the factory of like, we have the yeast here and the thing, and taste it at this step and then that step and all of these steps. And he was like, this is amazing. We're going to create an ad that basically says, our beer goes to these like 25 steps to get this amazing, beer end product. And the company rep said, no, we can't do that because actually like everyone's beer goes through these steps. Everyone else does it. And he said back, yes, but no one else has talked about it. And you think about a lot of criticism that Android people have about Apple, where Apple will be like, now you can finally do blah, blah, blah with your texts. And like the Android people, like that are your friends or Twitter, they'll be like, Android could do that 5 years ago or whatever. And you're like, yeah, but like Apple just doesn't care. It's like, that's kind of the approach you're taking here. If every email service provider can be like, we have ready-made designs and they're beautiful templates made by a designer, like that's true. So you're going to talk about it anyways, but look at the competition. This is the difference. Sprout Social, again, is not a player in the space, but when they're talking about like HubSpot or whatever, they're just not talking about these details. And then this Visme is just going through and is like email builder, automation.
They're not talking about like the customer experience or what the customer benefits from using these things. They're just saying here's a specific feature, and it's not that informative.
Right. So like Klaviyo is like a big player in e-commerce or whatever. Powerful automation. And their description of powerful automation is just saying this again in more words. Powerful marketing automation. Automate your email marketing based on customer behavior metrics. Of course, that's literally what it means. Powerful. Of course it's going to be on customer behavior metrics. Or like segmentation. Segment your subscribers into specific targeted groups. That's just what the word segmentation means in this case. Right? So like this is common. And I don't mean to like rip on Visme, but like everyone does this. When we are looking at the SERP for all of our client pieces, you see this over and over and over again.
So what would you say instead of this then? So if you were writing this piece for OmniSend, I guess instead of doing this key feature, like what would you write there instead?
Yeah, so for the design templates build beautiful emails, I would show it to them. And I would say like why our email and templates are great. So there's going to be stuff that probably Klaviyo has and MailChimp has, but I would do it like this, for example. And again, your example should be better because like I haven't interviewed anyone. I don't know anything about OmniSend. But if you interview them and you're going to try to get out these, I'll answer your question, but let me do it with a little bit of conversation. I would be asking them, my product expert in the interview, so that I don't have to come up with it on my own, to try to get what their slant is. Say like, what is really nice about our email templates? What are you proud about the email templates? How did we design it, depending on who you're talking about, or the salesperson? Like, how do you sell this? And they're going to give you some nugget. And it may not be that, maybe Klaviyo has the same thing. Maybe MailChimp has the same thing. But like, it's going to be something. And they're going to say something like, like our templates are categorized by like sale and promotion templates, luxury versus whatever, versus like big photo and this and that. And like, there's this little detail about how like, you can drag and drop a photo of like an awkward size and it auto crops it or something like that, right? And then I don't care. I don't give one F whether in this case for like a space like this that's so crowded, I'm not going to be researching and figuring out, does all the other competitors have that? I'm just going to assume probably they do. Okay? And then I'm just going to sell that in detail. So I'm going to get ready in the blog post to position that. So in this blog post that OmniSend has, which is 5 or 6 on the SERP, right? They have some intro, forget about that. We talked about that in a previous video. Then they'll be like how to choose. And I'm getting ready to sell OmniSend here. So we do this all the time, like factors to consider is what we call it. So one of mine is going to be like a drag and drop builder that doesn't require you to spend hours editing your images, right? And again, like you should be doing, I just made up that example because Benji asked me this question, right, on the spot. But like you should be doing the legwork to make sure that whatever you're mentioning is something they actually care about. And that legwork is to ask the product or sales or marketing expert, what do customers love or what are we really proud about our email builder? Or maybe it's like, and I would set this up, like choose one where the builder has, templates for different types of use cases or something, like whatever it is. And then when you're here, when you're in the section for yourself, like best email, so you're like in the OmniSend section, you're selling yourself. I'm not just like listing 5 bullets and moving on to the next one.
Yeah, this is a huge mistake that we see people do. Just like they go to the website and just pull out the features and then that's what they list here instead of really talking about what makes their product good.
Yeah, look at this.
It's not just the features. Yeah.
Intuitive or email template library with 250 templates. Can we go to like Klaviyo's page and see like how many templates they have? They probably have the same thing. Like probably every single one says this. Platform, email. Anyway, like I'm sure we could find it. Like everyone is going to say, but maybe that is it. We've had a client once that had like, it was a marketing analytics tools with integrations, and a huge differentiator for them was most of these tools that like integrate your marketing data from like multiple disparate tools into one dashboard thing. They have like 100 or 200 like of those integrations, those pipes to like different tools or whatever to get the analytics. But theirs, they had 2,000, and they had an ability to quickly build a custom integration if you had data just like in a CSV or on some hard drive somewhere. It was actually pretty cool. So that was our differentiation. And in piece after piece, when we talked about that, we would say, look, all these other tools in marketing integration where you're like, that are like grabbing data from your email program and your website and your whatever and putting it in one dashboard for the team to look at. They have maybe 100 or 200. But most companies, they're going to have some obscure data source that's not in that list. Then what do you do? And we would say, but for us, we have, first of all, 2,000, and we have an ability to create a custom like pipe to some like obscure data source. And that was our differentiation. So you would want to lean into it and say, you figure out from the team, what is different about our email templates? Not even different. What is good? What do customers like about? And then you're getting ready to talk about in the blog post. Then in the actual blog post, that section of it, I would like split this out in like email template and drag and drop builder. I would like blow that up into an H3 or H4 header. And then I would have like screenshots and walk through what that person told me. Not word for word, obviously, but like summarizing the key benefit. Look, cropping these images, like in most of other ones, you need an image of the exact pixel size that like the template requires. Otherwise, it looks all skewed. Again, I'm just totally making this up. But in ours, you can drag and drop it, an image of any size, and you can crop in the tool or something, or whatever, right? Or look, we have templates for use cases that most other email tools didn't have. There's going to be something. Like people who built these tools, they built and made product decisions intentionally, right? Ideally, you're not working for a client or for a company that whose product just straight up sucks, right? Like if you're just like, I'm sorry, Davis, like my client's product is just bad on all aspects, like I can't really help you. You know what I mean? Like good, like it's hard to market bad products, but like there's going to be something where they're like, like there's a reason we designed it this way because we were tired of this, or all the other tools didn't have this, and I would focus on that. And maybe if email templates wasn't the strength, I would go to integrations and focus on that. Like that marketing analytics client, they had like dashboard templates too, but they weren't the prettiest. So we focused a lot more on like handling the data and those integrations and being able to get it from all of those aspects.
Yeah, so just to summarize what you're saying so far. So you're saying go to the SERP, look at the different posts, look at the website of the client or your own company, and just figure out what are the key value props to dig into on the call with the subject matter expert. And then from like a feature by feature perspective, you're asking, why do customers love this feature? Like, is there anything unique about this feature different than other businesses? And you're trying to extract that information from them and then kind of prioritize what the company does best and use that in like leading with the copy instead of just putting a list of features. You're trying to say, no, we do something different with templates, or we have more, they're for this use case or for this customer type. And you're trying to put that information in here as opposed to just listing things. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're trying to. So here's some analogies to kind of say what you said is I agree with. Is like you're trying to control the conversation, right? You're trying to say, look, in an email service provider, there's like a million features, but you want to frame.
Yeah, you want to give a sales pitch. If someone's learning about what you're doing for the first time, like what do you sell first? Like what's most important to the customer? And understanding what their needs are, I think, is important for the writer. And then talking to that subject matter expert and getting that information about how would you sell this product to someone who knows nothing about it, essentially.
Yeah, like it's almost like your attack plan. Like you're sort of, in like a game of chess, you're thinking, I'm strong on this side of the board and I'm going to go here, here, and here. But you're not going to go everywhere, right? And you're framing it in that way. An analogy for people listening to this is ourselves comes to mind, where, and I wanted to transition to this eventually of my example with the email service providers was a certain type of space where there's maybe the products are a little bit commoditized and like everyone has a ton of features and they're all trying to compete on features. That's one category of product. Another category of product or service that we have clients in are ones where there's like this overarching like strategic difference in how they approach, a particular solution. So it's really hard for me to say this without like naming clients, but I have some in mind, right? But let's just use ourselves as an analogy, as a service. Like there are a lot of content marketing agencies, freelancers, and people you can hire to like make content for you. As a service, we've made a clear like positioning, like line in the sand where we're like, everything we are built around is around content that gets conversions and leads. And as a result, our like feature to do that is through our like bottom of funnel keyword selection and SEO, right? And like pain point SEO. There are products that do that too, right? Again, I'm stumbling because I have like particular clients in mind. We can't just like be like naming clients willy-nilly on these videos, but like I'm just going to make up some example and hopefully it starts to make sense. Imagine there was, let's do that marketing analytics example. Imagine there was a marketing analytics tool, for example, that it wasn't like they're competing on little tiny features, but they're saying, hey, you know what? We have mastered multi-touch attribution, and their whole like view of the world, let's say, is, all these other tools that tell you like landing pages and, it came from Google Ads or whatever are, full of shit, excuse my language. And the reality is your customers have 5 million touch points with you, and like you really need some, and we have some statistical model, something. And like those are tools where it's not like this Omnisend example where it's like, well, MailChimp has an email builder and we do, and Klaviyo has segmentation and we do. Like that's one kind of category of like extreme, commoditization and features. And then you're just like going into each feature and being like, let's just figure out how to sell our builder. The other one is like, if they have a huge worldview where they're flipping the way they do things on their head. Oh, an example, we have a case study published is like Rainforest QA. They were a client a while ago, but when we were working with them, their big thing was like, to do software QA, people use other software, like they like write scripts that go in and click buttons on their software, and it's like you have to code this like QA button click routine to QA your software code. So you're like coding on top of coding, and you have to use coders time. And their whole thing was, we built something that's truly no code. So like someone who's not a developer from the product or customer support team can build these like QA scripts of like, click this button and this thing better appear. Otherwise the software's broken, and notify all of us on Slack or something like that. And like everything we wrote was based on that. Not everything, but like huge portions of the blog post were like framed around that. And our version of controlling that conversation, the chess piece thing, is we would start the conversation. The equivalent of like the email thing was we would say, the biggest thing you need to worry about and think about when you're looking at QA software is who is designing these QA tests. If it's developers, you're screwed because developers are busy actually developing the code. And that's a terrible way to do it. Similarly, when you read Grow and Convert blog, you could argue that our blogs are repetitive. It's intentional to some extent. Where like on so many of our blog posts, we frame the conversation around stop wasting time producing top of funnel content that's just getting you hollow traffic that doesn't convert. That's your number one mistake. And every other mistake is subservient to that mistake. Your biggest thing needs to be bottom of funnel. Those are this other category of product. And for those, the way you approach that interview is like, first of all, you need to have done that first interview to know that. If that is your client or your company and you're doing that feature stuff we looked about in the email thing, and you're not starting and framing the blog post in that respect, you're not doing your job properly. You're not writing well. Like, I'm sorry. I don't care how good your grammar is.
You need to
or
understand the company's positioning before you can write. So like when we start off engagements, we're talking to sales and customer success and different people inside of the company to try to figure out why people sign up for their product, what's different about their approach or in their product than anyone else. And it's extracting those value props, and those just become the selling points over and over and over again in every blog post, because that is why people sign up for them. And so you need to be able to communicate that well.
Yeah, and in those conversations, honestly, Benji and I start before that. We start an hour sales call with that prospect before they're a client. Is he and I are constantly trying to figure out, when someone reaches out to us, what makes this business tick? Like, why are people buying? Like, why would we buy if we were the customer? And we literally are slacking each other on the side. And there are many, many companies that reach out to us where we're like, we don't buy this. This makes no sense. There was one a couple years ago weeks ago, where both of us were like, what are they saying?
Yeah, I mean, clarity in what they do and why is important. And if you don't have that, it's going to be really difficult to market the business.
Yeah. And so you can ask direct questions like that at the beginning. Like, and it's different from the example I told where we're like zooming in on the email builder. For those other, you need to have a zoomed out conversation to be like, your tool, Omnisend, how do you approach email marketing differently? And in that initial question, you should be able to ascertain pretty quickly, within a few minutes of that question being asked, do they have this big positioning differentiator or not? In this case, from poking around their website and seeing all the competitors, probably not. I don't see anything in their website that indicates they have like a major positioning difference, right? If we actually, it would be useful to actually like look at their website for a second. But like here, in terms of OmniSend, if we just go to their actual site, like you look here, and again, I feel bad. I hope no one from OmniSend is like watching this, so I don't mean to like rip on it in a bad way, but it's all like kind of generic, right? So like send emails and estimates
Yeah, I
that
mean,
really.
to me, it seems like their key value prop is pricing. So they led with that in the blog post, and it's in their, yeah, and like their whole page is around this. So like my guess is that they're selling against Klaviyo or something like that, because that is known to be super expensive, and people in the e-com space are really frustrated by that. And so I'm guessing they're just selling against that, saying, look, if you want an email provider that has the same kind of feature set for e-com, we're just the cheaper option.
Yeah. Which if I was me, I would lean into it even harder on the homepage, but
Yeah, like maybe name competitors, or just outright say that, like, many e-commerce owners don't want to pay thousands of dollars for their email platform. Like, here's a better solution.
But to go back to the questioning for a specific blog post, so then if you need to kind of figure out where on that spectrum this product that you're marketing falls. Spectrum, one side is maybe like the GNC side, where they're just like, this product is upending the previous way that everyone has done it, and they have this very strong like meta positioning worldview, like we're just doing marketing analytics in a different way. Nobody does multi-touch, or they don't do it properly, and like we have the first unique kind of doing that, or something like that. Versus on the opposite side, something like email providers or newsletter providers, where it's like everyone says beautiful, they have like all the same features and it's all the same. Either one can be marketed. Again, like assuming you don't suck on all the features, but like either one can be marketed, but you need to figure that out. That's like goal number one. And you can ask direct questions, like if they say, oh, you asked OmniSend, how do you do things differently? And they're like, well, and they start saying stuff, and your intuition while you're listening to this is, that's not really different. I saw that on Klaviyo's site. Don't hold back. And this is something we've teach our own strategists. I've done that. I've watched the strategist recording of interviews of our clients. And then the strategist in the interview is very quiet, and they're very like sort of like, okay, and they're like taking everything the client says at face value. Then afterwards, when we're discussing the piece, the strategist's real opinions come out. These are usually younger, newer strategists on our team, and they're like, but Davish, like, I can't really say that because I actually looked at their competitors' sites and they all say the same thing, but the client's saying no. What do? I'm like, you should have just told that to them. Like, and that's what you should do, is just don't feel like, well, the client said this, so I have to write it that way. Like, they're not always the final, they haven't thought this through that carefully sometimes. Like, that's part of what your value add can be, is like, is you should push back and say, well, hold on, MailChimp says the same thing, or whatever. Like, how and then that discussion gets you to the heart of the matter, where eventually they may break, like Benji said, and be like, you know what, you're right, we're just cheaper. And then like you can work with it. You don't need every blog post to have some like major, we've upended the industry. It doesn't need to be that way. You just need the honest truth, so you can decide how am I going to frame that conversation. Maybe that is the big theme of this like architecting, how to architect the arguments for a bottom of funnel product led query article, and how to get that information from an interview, is always have in your head your current latest hypothesis of what that story is likely going to be. Then use the interview to validate or invalidate that hypothesis. Like, I think OmniSend's pitch is going to be, we're cheapest and all of our features are just as comparable as to the expensive enterprise one. Look, like, it's like good features. We're not going to try to say we have any feature that anyone else doesn't have, because that's not true. But we're just going to sell the features well and say, like, look, it's really nice to build emails with us. It's really easy to segment with us. And we can do all of that at a fraction of the price. And then you go into the interview. And if they invalidate one of your hypotheses, good. You learn something new. You'd be like, oh, interesting. You actually do segmentation in a way that no one else does. Oh, you can plug right into Shopify's data or something or whatever, right? Like, and then you're like, okay, now you start to like modify your hypothesis a little bit. It can be in your head, like while you're talking, but like that's how you should be framing that story. It's like you're almost like a detective, Like, you know when like two friends are fighting and they both complain to you and you're like, man, like who's right? You know? And so like, and you'll be like, oh, what happened, Benji? Like, oh, she said this. And then you talk to your friend and you're like, yeah, Benji always does that, huh? And then you're trying to be like, frame it. Like, you can do that on the fly. You should be able to do this on the fly where you're just like, listen, like, like it was Benji's fault or like whatever. You should be able to figure that out. Be like, okay, like this is what the differentiators are. Yeah. And I think that takes your post from, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to list my key features in bullet points and I'm going to have 2 sentences each to you can have, and maybe we actually didn't even spend time talking about this architecture, and I can share my screen again to show this. Your end goal should be that when there is post after post on the SERP here that just has these like 3 quick paragraphs that basically don't say much, or in this case, like 2 sentences and then some bullet points of the same features. Every email provider has analytics to see open rates. No duh, right? Is you're going to want your clients or your products section to be really long and everyone else is this generic thing. So if I was Visme comes first. I'm assuming this is also, I don't know what the heck this is. But if I'm Omnisend comes first, which they didn't. But this is a long section where I'm going into our library, I'm going into our builder, I'm going into our integrations, and like explaining with screenshots. It's like you're putting like a demo recording on the page. Don't take that literally, but like almost. And then, and you have a long section, and then everyone else is this quick thing. In this case, they're giving the same amount of real estate on their own blog post to the next tool, Moosend, as they are to themselves. And that's like, why? Because it's not your job to market Moosend. And I think most people think, because Google's going to see it's not fair, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? Google ranks our posts all the time for clients, and we spend 10 times as much. And if it's going to be like, the reader is going to know your bias, they already know your bias. They know where they are. They know they're on the Omnisend blog. Put your best foot forward and sell yourself. So that's the goal. The end goal is you're going to want a long section on yours. But what we were talking about on this conversation that you need to keep in mind is, how are you going to talk about that? How are you framing the conversation? Which features and their benefits? That was another thing I want to make sure I say before we close, is all of this discussion of features is not really to talk about the technical features. It's to ascertain what end benefits is best. The email template library and the number of templates you have only matters in so much as people care, right? And that's what I was saying, is like, that's the questions you want to get at, is like, what about our builder is good, is you want the benefit from the person you're interviewing. Like people really hate cropping their photos. It like takes a lot of time or whatever. And then you're saying, that's a pain point, and here's the benefit. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. You can also get the audio-only versions of these shows wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow us at growandconvert.com/newsletter for any articles and updates for when these videos come out.